You spend your whole life thinking you know what darkness is. You think it's a moonless night or a room with the lights off. I'm here to tell you, you don't have a clue. For 30 years, my office was a hole in the ground, 2,500 feet deep. Down there, you learn to feel the earth's heartbeat. But on that day, it stopped beating for me. And in that silence, I found out what real darkness is, and what lies on the other side of it. My name is Jed. I was a coal miner. It was honest, hard work. The air was always thick, tasting of damp earth and sulfur. The groaning of the support beams was like an old friend telling you to be careful. It was the smell of putting food on the table for my wife, Sarah, and our daughter, Emily. It was my life. That afternoon was like any other. My buddies, Cody and Earl, had headed topside to get a busted generator fixed. I told them I'd stay behind just for a bit. There was a promising seam I wanted to finish. Just one more foot, Jed, I kept telling myself, swinging the pickaxe. That rhythm, thud, 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 it was almost hypnotic. What a fool I was. I should have known better. It was the last foot of my life. I heard it before I felt it. A sound that didn't belong. A sharp, violent crack, like a giant snapping a bone right above my head. I froze, my pickaxe still in the air. My headlamp beam shot upward, shaking, and I saw dust raining down from the ceiling. In the rumble. A low, gut-wrenching groan from deep inside the mountain. It wasn't just a sound. You felt it in your teeth, in your bones. The whole world started to shake. The path I'd just walked down, it was gone. In seconds. A solid wall of rock and dirt slammed down, sealing me in. The noise was deafening, and then it was just gone. Replaced by a silence so complete, so heavy, it felt like my eardrums were going to burst. I screamed for Cody, for Earl, my voice sounding small and pathetic in that tiny black space. But the only thing that answered was the echo of my own terror. The first wave of panic is a wild animal. It claws at you, steals your breath. I slammed my pickaxe against the wall of debris until my arms burned, the sound just a useless thud. But panic burns fuel, and my fuel was the one thing I couldn't afford to lose: air. Slowly, a cold, terrifying calm settled over me. I sat down, my back against the coalface, and I listened to my own breathing. Each breath getting shallower, slower. The air became a currency, and I was going broke. I thought of Sarah, the way she smiled over her first cup of coffee in the morning. I thought of Emily, her little hand in mine as I taught her to ride a bike without training wheels. My body was trapped in that mountain, but my soul was with them, in our little kitchen, in our sunlit backyard. My headlamp, my last little piece of the world, began to flicker. Once, twice, and then it died, plunging me into a blackness I had never known. It was a hungry, absolute darkness that didn't just surround you. It consumed you. My breathing stopped. My heart gave one last tired beat, and I died. But what happened next was even worse. Or maybe it was better. I'm still not sure. What do you think happens when it's all over? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because what I saw next, nobody could have prepared me for. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell, because you won't want to miss what I have to share. I promise you, there are stories from the other side you need to hear. But to understand what I saw on the other side, you have to understand the man I was before. I wasn't a bad guy. I paid my bills, I loved my wife, I'd have taken a bullet for my daughter, but I was empty, I just didn't know it yet. My life was a train on a track, and I was just a passenger, staring out the window, watching the same scenery go by day after day. My world was small. It started with the 4 a.m. alarm clock, a sound I hated more than anything. I'd sit on the edge of the bed in the dark, my back already aching, and pull on my work boots. Sarah would be asleep next to me, a soft lump under the covers. I'd watch her for a moment, the rise and fall of her breathing. There was a time I would have kissed her goodbye, but somewhere along the line that stopped. It wasn't a fight or a big decision, it just faded, like an old photograph left in the sun. The drive to the mine was always silent, just the hum of the truck's engine and the sad country songs on the radio. I'd pass the same houses, the same closed-down diner, the same stray dog sleeping on someone's porch. I was a ghost in my own life. I was there, but I wasn't. At dinner, Emily would talk about school, about her friends, about some show on the internet I didn't understand. I'd nod and say, "That's great, sweetie," but my mind was 1,000 miles away. Or 2,500 feet down, I was thinking about the bills, about the leaky roof, about the strange noise the truck was making. Sarah knew. Of course she knew. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me with this sad, tired expression. Her eyes would say, "Where are you, Jed? I miss you," but I didn't know how to answer. How do you tell the person you love most in the world that you feel like you're drowning in a perfectly calm sea? It felt like I was carrying something heavy on my back all the time. A backpack full of rocks. Each rock was a worry, a disappointment, a thing I should have said but didn't. And I thought that was just what being a man was. You just carry the rocks and you don't complain. I thought the pressure of providing for my family was the heaviest thing I'd ever feel. I thought the silence in my own home was the deepest darkness I'd ever know. I was so wrong. The mountain was about to show me what real pressure was, and what waited in a silence deeper than any I could have imagined. The mountain tried to warn me. I see that now. It spoke in a language older than words, and I was too deafened by my own life to listen. It started that morning before the sun had even thought about rising. Sarah had woken up from a nightmare. She never had nightmares. She sat straight up in bed, her hand clutching her chest, breathing hard. I asked her what was wrong, and she just shook her head, her eyes wide and dark in the dim light. It was just crushing, she whispered, like I couldn't breathe. She held on to me a little too long when I left, her fingers digging into my arm. I just kissed her forehead and told her to get some more sleep. I dismissed it. A bad dream. That's all. What a fool I was to think her heart wasn't tied to mine, even in sleep. Then on the drive-in, the radio died. Not a crackle of static, not a hiss, just dead silence right in the middle of a song. The old truck had its quirks, sure, but this was different. The silence was so sudden, so complete, it felt like the world outside my windshield had been put on mute. For a solid minute there was nothing. No engine hum, no wind, just an unnerving quiet. I banged on the dashboard and it sputtered back to life. But for that 1 minute it felt like I was the only person left on Earth. I should have turned the truck around right then and there. Down below, the air was wrong. It was colder than it should have been. A thin, sharp draft that snaked its way down the collar of my shirt, a draft that had no business being 2,500 feet deep. The old timbers, the ones that usually groaned like a sleepy old man, were making a different sound. High-pitched creaks, tense little pops. It was the sound of something being stretched to its breaking point. Earl even mentioned it. "She's talking funny today, Jed," he'd said, spitting a stream of tobacco juice. I just grunted in reply, my mind already on the seam, on the paycheck. But the final warning, that's the one that haunts me. Just before Cody and Earl headed up, a chunk of rock, no bigger than my fist, broke free from the ceiling and landed right at my feet. It didn't fall with a thud. It landed with a soft poof in the thick dust, almost gentle. We all stopped and looked up. My headlamp beam caught a web of fresh hairline cracks spreading out from where it had fallen. Cody looked at me, his eyebrows knitted with worry. "Maybe we call it a day, Jed, but I saw that last foot of coal. I could practically smell the bonus it would bring." "Nah, I got this," I said, waving them off. "It's just the mountain settling." The mountain was settling, all right. It was settling on my grave. And as I watched their lights disappear down the tunnel, I felt a loneliness so profound it was a physical weight. The silence they left behind wasn't empty. It was full. It was watching. It was waiting. And I picked up my axe to face it alone. I swung the pickaxe. The thud against the coal face was the only sound in the universe. It was a rhythm I knew better than my own heartbeat. Thud, a little closer to paying off the truck. Thud, a new pair of shoes for Emily. Thud, one more day done. I was so focused, so lost in that rhythm that I almost missed it. The first real sign. A fine black dust began to rain down on my shoulders, heavier than usual. It wasn't the normal fallout from a swing. It was the mountain shedding its skin. Then came the sound. It wasn't the familiar groan of the timbers. This was a sharp, tearing shriek that shot right through my bones. It was the sound of something ancient giving up. I froze, my pickaxe halfway through a swing. My headlamp shot up, the beam cutting a frantic circle on the ceiling. Quote, I saw it then. A crack, thick as my thumb, zipping across the rock above me like a bolt of black lightning. The mountain was breaking. Before I could even process a thought, the floor beneath my boots bucked like a wild horse. A deep, guttural roar erupted from all around me. A sound so powerful it wasn't just heard, it was felt. It was the sound of 1,000,000 tons of rock deciding my time was up. The tunnel behind me, my only way out, didn't just collapse. It vanished. An avalanche of rock and earth exploded inwards, the air pressure slamming into me, knocking me off my feet. The noise was absolute, a physical force that crushed everything. And then, just as suddenly, silence. A silence so complete, so heavy, it pushed in on me from all sides. It wasn't just the absence of noise, it was a presence. The air was instantly thick with dust, choking me, filling my mouth with the taste of my own tomb. My headlamp beam cut a pathetic little cone into the chaos. The way back was gone, replaced by a solid wall of death. Panic, hot and sharp, ripped through me. I screamed until my throat was raw, but the sound just died a few feet from my face, swallowed by the suffocating blackness. My air was the next thing to go. Every frantic breath I took was a gamble, pulling in more dust than oxygen. My lungs felt like they were on fire. The panic faded, replaced by a cold, terrifying clarity. I was going to die here. I slumped down against the debris, my body trembling. And in that darkness, my life didn't flash before my eyes. Not all of it, just the important parts. I saw Sarah sitting across from me at the kitchen table, her head tilted as she listened to some story I was telling. I saw the look in her eyes, a look I hadn't noticed enough. It was love, pure and simple. I saw Emily's face, beaming with pride, the day she got her driver's license. I had just handed her the keys and said, "Be careful." I should have said, "I'm so proud of you." All the things I hadn't said. All the moments I was there, but not really there. They came at me like ghosts in the dark. The rocks I carried on my back every day, the bills, the worries, they were nothing. The real weight was the love I hadn't given freely enough. My headlamp, my last friend in the world, began to flicker. It was a cruel little countdown. It flashed once on the wall of rock that had buried me, then again, and then it went out. I was plunged into a blackness so total it felt like a solid thing. I took one last ragged breath that wasn't a breath at all. My heart gave a final, tired flutter in my chest, and then nothing. I died. But that wasn't the end. The real story, the one you won't believe, was only just beginning. There was no tunnel of light, no choir of angels. There was just a letting go. One moment I was a body, a collection of aches and pains and failing lungs, crushed by the weight of a mountain. The next moment I wasn't. It was like I'd been carrying a backpack full of rocks my entire life and someone had just unbuckled the straps. The weight was just gone. The cold that had seeped into my bones vanished. The burning in my chest, the frantic need for air, it all just floated away. I was light, lighter than dust, lighter than a thought. I was floating in the blackness, but it wasn't the mind's darkness anymore. That was a dead, heavy thing. This was different. It was alive. And for the first time I could see. Not with my eyes, I didn't have eyes anymore, but I could see. Down below me in a pathetic little pocket of rock was a body. My body. It looked small and tired, slumped against the debris, the dead headlamp still strapped to the helmet. I saw the pickaxe lying near its hand. I saw the coal dust caked on its face, but I didn't feel sadness. I felt pity, like looking at a pair of old, worn-out work boots you were finally throwing away. That wasn't me anymore. It was just the shell I'd left behind. Then the darkness began to change. It wasn't just black. It was a deep, velvety indigo, a purple so rich it felt like you could touch it. And in that deepness, tiny sparks began to appear. At first I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, but they grew. They weren't like stars in the night sky. They were closer, softer. They drifted around me like embers from a gentle fire, glowing with colors I'd never seen on Earth. Hues of soft gold, deep magenta, and a blue that felt like peace itself. A sound started too. It wasn't a sound I heard with ears, but one I felt in the very center of my being. It was a low, beautiful hum, like a cello string being played a million miles away. It was the background music of everything. The silence of the mind had been an absence of noise. This was a presence, a harmony. All the tension I'd carried in my shoulders for 30 years just melted into that sound. The constant worry about bills, the unspoken distance between me and Sarah, the fear I wasn't a good enough father, it all just dissolved. I realized I wasn't in the mine at all. I was somewhere else. The walls of rock had faded away, replaced by an infinite gentle space. The sparks of light weren't just sparks. They were swirling clouds of creation, nebulae that bloomed like impossible flowers in a cosmic garden. I felt a pull, not a forceful one, but a gentle invitation, drawing me forward, deeper into the light and the music. The fear was gone. The confusion was gone. For the first time since I was a little boy, I wasn't worried about the next step. I just knew, with a certainty that went beyond thought, that I was going home. The pull was gentle, like a current in a warm ocean, drawing me deeper into the light. And then I was before it. It wasn't a man on a throne or some old figure in the clouds. It was a light, but that word is too small. It was a sun 1,000,000 times brighter than our own, but you could look right at it, and all you felt was warmth. All you felt was love. It was a love so pure, so absolute, it found every broken piece of you, every dark corner you kept hidden, and it didn't judge. It just healed. A voice spoke, but not with sound. The words bloomed directly inside my soul as if they were my own thoughts, but wiser and kinder than anything I could have come up with. "Welcome, Jed. Rest now." The relief in those words was so powerful it would have brought me to my knees if I'd had any. The weight I'd carried my whole life, not just the backpack of rocks, but the weight of being me, it was lifted. I was home. And then it showed me. It didn't tell me. It showed me why so many of us feel like we're trapped in our own little cave-ins, even when we're walking around under an open sky. The beautiful starry garden around me shifted, and I was looking down at the world I'd left. I saw a young woman walking through a crowded city street. She was smiling, but on her back, invisible to everyone else, was a heavy pack made of shadows. The voice explained that each stone inside was a regret, a grudge, a mistake she couldn't forgive herself for. She was trying to walk forward, but her past was a physical anchor. The voice was so gentle when it explained, "They cannot feel my presence because they are too heavy to rise. Forgiveness is the only thing that empties the bag." The scene dissolved and reformed. Now I saw a family at a dinner table in a nice house. A mom, a dad, 2 kids. They were all there, but they weren't together. Their faces were lit by the blue glow of their phones. The air above their table was thick with a fog of worry thoughts about the mortgage, about what people at school thought, about a future that hadn't happened yet. They live in tomorrow, the voice explained. They build walls against a future that may never come, and in doing so, they miss the kingdom that is right here, in the now. I am in the shared meal. I am in the quiet glance. But they cannot see me. They are looking too far ahead. One last vision appeared. A man in an expensive suit standing in a corner office high above a city. He was looking at himself in the reflection of the window, admiring his success. But I could see what he couldn't. The reflection was trapped inside a cage of shimmering gold. He was a prisoner of his own pride. The ego is a hungry ghost, the voice whispered in my soul. It demands to be the center of the universe, and it blocks out the light of everything else. To find me, they must be willing to look past their own reflection. The visions faded, and I was back, floating in the warm, unconditional love of the light. It all made sense. It wasn't about big, dramatic sins. It was about the little prisons we build for ourselves every day. Resentment, anxiety, pride. They were the walls. They were the rock falls that sealed us off from the love that was all around us all the time, just waiting. It's so peaceful here, I thought, the question forming without words. Can I stay? The light pulsed with a feeling of profound understanding. This peace is your birthright. It is always here for you, but love is a thread that pulls both ways. The love you created has not let you go. And then I saw them. Not as a vision, but as a feeling. I felt Sarah's heart break. I felt the sharp, tearing sob of my daughter, Emily. They were in our kitchen, holding on to each other, their pain a physical thing that reached across the veil and found me. I had felt the perfect peace of the universe, but now I felt the perfect, messy, beautiful pain of human love. And I finally understood. The point wasn't to escape the world and its burdens. The point was to go back and learn how to live in it without them, to bring a little piece of this light back down into the darkness. I made my choice. I chose the pain. I chose the love. I chose them. And the light, in an act of infinite grace, surged forward and embraced me completely. The light didn't answer with words. It answered with a feeling of deep, profound empathy, like a father understanding his tired son. This peace is your birthright, the thought bloomed inside me. It is always here. It is what you are made of. But love is a thread that pulls both ways. The love you wove into the world has not let you go. And then I felt it. It wasn't a memory, it was real. It was happening right now. I felt a sharp, tearing pain that wasn't mine. It was Sarah. I felt her heart shatter in our little kitchen, a sound louder than any mountain collapsing. I felt her fall into a chair, her body racked with a sob so deep it shook the foundations of her soul. Then another wave hit me. It was Emily, the desperate, hopeless cry of a daughter who had just lost her hero. Their grief wasn't a story. It was a force of nature, a storm of pure, agonizing love that reached across the veil of death and latched onto me. In that moment I understood the first great surprise. The perfect, tranquil peace of the universe was beautiful, but it was nothing compared to the messy, painful, magnificent power of human love. Peace was a calm ocean, but their love was a tidal wave, and it was pulling me home. It wasn't a choice between heaven and earth. It was a choice between serene stillness and them. I choose them, I thought, with every ounce of my being. I choose the pain. I choose the love. One choose them. The light pulsed, not with surprise, but with an infinite, radiant approval. It was the last thing I felt before the universe turned itself inside out. The return wasn't gentle. It was a violent birth. I was ripped backward from that warm, infinite space as if hooked and pulled through the eye of a needle. The beautiful hum was replaced by a deafening roar, a rushing sound like a cosmic hurricane. The feeling of weightlessness vanished, and I slammed back into my body with the force of a car crash. Pain. Oh God, the pain. It was a symphony of agony. The cold of the rocks seeped into me. The crushing weight of my own limbs felt like a ton of bricks. My lungs were on fire, 2 empty bags screaming for air. It felt like I was being electrocuted and frozen at the same time. A high-pitched whine started in my ears, the sound of my own nervous system screaming back to life. And then I took a breath. It wasn't a breath. It was a gasp. A raw, ragged tearing of air that scraped my throat and exploded in my chest. It was the most painful, most beautiful thing I have ever felt. With that breath came sound. Not the celestial harmony, but muffled, frantic shouting, the beeping of a machine, fast and insistent. My eyelids fluttered open. The gentle, healing light was gone, replaced by a single blinding beam from a headlamp. It was hellishly bright. My eyes tried to focus, and a face swam into view. It was Cody. His face was a mess of coal dust and tears, his expression a mixture of terror and disbelief. His mouth was moving, but the sound was distant. Then his voice broke through the noise, raw and full of impossible relief. "He's back! My God, he's back!" The world came back in pieces. First, the noise. A chaotic symphony of shouting and the frantic, high-pitched beeping of machines. Then came the light, a single brutal beam that stabbed at my eyes after the gentle glow I'd just left. It was like being thrown out of the most peaceful dream into the middle of a war zone. My body was a universe of pain. Every nerve ending was screaming. My lungs felt like they were full of broken glass, and the cold. The cold was a physical thing trying to crawl back inside me. I was on a stretcher being rushed through the darkness of the mine. Faces I knew, rescuers, friends floated above me, their expressions a mix of shock and something like fear. They weren't looking at me like they'd saved a man. They were looking at me like they'd seen a ghost. In the ambulance, a paramedic kept checking my pulse, his eyes wide. His heart had stopped. I heard him whisper to the driver. For at least 7 minutes. It just started again. They had their words for it. Hypoxia. Lazarus phenomenon. They were just labels they put on things they couldn't understand, but I knew it wasn't a phenomenon. It was a choice. My choice. The reunion with Sarah and Emily at the hospital wasn't like anything you see in the movies. There wasn't a big dramatic run down the hallway. When they were finally allowed in my room, they walked in slowly, hesitantly, as if I might shatter if they moved too fast. Sarah's face was pale, with dark circles under her eyes that hadn't been there that morning. Emily was clinging to her mom's arm, her eyes red and swollen. And when I looked at them, really looked at them, it was like seeing color for the first time. I saw every line of worry on Sarah's forehead. I saw the tiny fleck of gold in Emily's tear-filled eyes. The backpack of rocks I'd been carrying my whole life. The mortgage. The truck payments. The unspoken worries. It wasn't there anymore. All that was left was them. I reached out my hand and Sarah flinched, just for a second before she took it. Her hand was trembling. "Jed?" she whispered, her voice cracking. It was the sound of a prayer being answered. I couldn't say much. My throat was raw, so I just held her hand and looked at my daughter. "I'm here," I rasped. And for the first time in years, I really was. I wasn't in the mine, I wasn't thinking about bills. I was right there, in that sterile white room holding the hands of my entire world, and I started to cry. Not from the pain, but from a gratitude so overwhelming it felt like my newly restarted heart was going to burst. Coming home was harder than I expected. The world felt wrong, was too loud. The drone of the television, the rumble of a truck passing outside, the meaningless chatter on the radio, it was all static, interfering with the beautiful, quiet hum I now knew existed just underneath it all. People seemed to be moving in a frantic blur, their faces tight with worries I now saw as shadows they carried on their backs. At the grocery store, I watched a woman yell at the cashier over a coupon. I saw 2 men nearly come to blows over a parking spot. They were all trapped in their own little cave-ins, and they didn't even know it. The old Jed would have been right there with them, annoyed and impatient. But the new me just felt sad for them. I found myself just sitting in the backyard, watching the wind move through the leaves on the old oak tree and feeling more connected than I ever did in a crowded room. Sarah was worried. She thought I was broken, that the trauma had sent me into a shell. She'd find me staring at a cup of coffee and ask what was wrong. "Nothing," I'd say, smiling. "It's just a really good cup of coffee." How could I explain it to her? How could I tell my wife that I had died and that I was only now, for the first time, learning how to live? The biggest change was in the silence. The silence in our house used to be a heavy, awkward thing, full of words we weren't saying. Now, it was different. One evening, a few weeks after I got home, Sarah and I were sitting on the porch as the sun went down. Neither of us was talking, but instead of feeling the distance, I just felt her. I reached over and took her hand. She looked at me surprised. I didn't say anything. I just held her hand and watched the fireflies start to blink in the twilight. Her eyes welled up with tears, but not sad ones. It was the look of a woman who had been waiting a very long time for her husband to come home, even though he'd been sitting next to her all along. The mountain didn't break me. It broke me open. Have you ever felt like you were a ghost in your own life, just going through the motions? What would it take to make you wake up and really see the world around you? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because the story of what happens when you try to explain a miracle to a world that doesn't believe in them Well, that's a whole other kind of cave-in, and you'll want to hear about it. The doctors had their charts and their theories. They called it a miracle, then slapped a scientific-sounding label on it to make themselves feel better. But I knew the truth. The man who came out of that mountain wasn't the same one who went in. The old Jed, the one who carried the weight of the world like a prize. He was still down there, buried under 1,000,000 tons of rock and regret. I was something new. At first, the world was just loud. The drone of the TV, the angry horns in traffic, the casual complaints people made about the weather, it all felt like nails on a chalkboard. I had heard the harmony of the universe, and now all I could hear was static. I started seeing the things the light had shown me everywhere. I'd see a man in a suit yelling into his phone, and I could almost feel the weight of his golden cage. I'd see a mother in the grocery store, her face tight with worry, and I could see the fog of tomorrow she was lost in, completely missing the little kid pulling on her sleeve, trying to show her something right now. Most of all, I saw the backpacks. I saw them on everyone, heavy, invisible sacks of yesterday's stones. I saw them on my friend Cody when he talked about an old grudge with his brother. I saw them on Sarah when she'd look in the mirror with a sad sigh. And I realized the heaviest one I'd ever seen had been my own. I'd spent my life digging for coal, thinking I was providing. But what good is a warm house if the people inside it are cold and distant? The biggest change happened in the quiet moments. One afternoon, I was sitting in the living room. The TV was on, some news channel shouting about something 1,000 miles away. I looked at my reflection in the dark screen, and I saw him, the man in the golden mirror, trapped by his own little world of worries. I got up, walked over, and pushed the power button. The shouting stopped. In the silence, I could hear Sarah humming in the kitchen. I could hear Emily laughing on the phone with a friend in her room. That was real. That was the kingdom. I never turned the TV on that way again. My new purpose didn't arrive like a lightning bolt. It came in whispers. It came when I started telling Sarah everything. Not just about the cabin, but about the light, the visions, the feeling of peace. I expected her to think I'd lost my mind. Instead, she just held my hand, tears in her eyes, and said, "I felt it, Jed. When they told me you were gone, I felt you let go. And then I felt you come back. Our love was a thread that pulled both ways. And that's when I knew I couldn't keep this to myself. My job wasn't in the mine anymore. My new job was to help people see the backpacks they were carrying, to show them how to put down the stones. I'd spent my life in the dark so that my family could have the light. But I was the one who couldn't see. The mountain had to crush me. I had to die just to open my eyes. The real treasures aren't the ones you dig for. They're the ones waiting for you when you get home." So what about you? What's the heaviest stone in your backpack right now? Let me know in the comments, because we all carry something. Be sure to subscribe and ring that bell, because I've got more stories from the other side, stories that might just help you lighten your own load. You won't want to miss them. I spent 30 years of my life digging in the dark, thinking that was how you brought light into your family's world. I thought the weight on my shoulders was the price of being a good man, a good husband, a good father. I had to be buried alive. I had to die. I had to leave this world completely, just to realize that the whole time, I was the one who couldn't see. The mountain didn't just break my body, it broke open my life. That light didn't just show me what was waiting on the other side. It showed me what was happening right here, on this one. It showed me that most of us are walking around in our own private cabins. We're buried under the weight of yesterday's stones, the things we can't forgive, the words we wish we could take back. We're lost in a fog of tomorrow, so worried about the future that we can't see the beautiful, ordinary miracle of right now. We're trapped, staring into a golden mirror of our own pride, unable to see the world of love that exists just past our own reflection. Those are the real walls. That's the real darkness. It's not 2,500 feet underground, it's inside us. And the only thing that can dig you out is you. You have to be willing to put down the stones, you have to be willing to step out of the fog. You have to be willing to break the mirror. The peace I felt on the other side, it's not just in heaven. A little piece of it is right here, waiting for us in the quiet moments, if we just get light enough to feel it. I'm about to ask you, what's the heaviest stone in your backpack today? What's the one thing you're carrying that you know you need to leave behind? Let me know your story down in the comments. We're all in this together. And if this story meant something to you, please subscribe and hit that bell. I came back with more than just my life that day. I came back with stories. Stories that might just help you find a little more light in your own world. You won't want to miss them.